का bookcase and she.
Yeah. Please carry on with the example and see what's wrong. But this should be left on your desk. One camera. This is working on is that pieces these are constant all of the processes here. So
discussion. May I request him to kindly accept the bouquet of flowers as a token of our appreciation. Okay, applause. Today, I'm also honored to welcome Dr. Prateek Sharma, Vice Chancellor, Terry School of Advanced Studies. May I request him to accept the token of gratitude. We are extremely fortunate to also have with us May I request Shobha Negi to give the books as token of gift from Garuda Prakashan publication. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from being a combat soldier, Major General Dr. G.D. Bakshi has recently been appointed as a distinguished visiting professor at the Terry School of Advanced Studies. A part of his charter is the study of traditional knowledge systems. Nothing could be more apt for this topic than the book being released today. The Vedas are 4 in number. The first 3, Rig, Sam, Yajur, are called the Vidya. The fourth, the Atharva, stands apart as the Brahma Veda or the Soma Veda. General Bakshi has authored 45 books and some 400 papers. May I now call upon the author to tell us about the highlights of his book.
Sanjeev Sanyal ji, Dr. Pratik Sharma, Ravi Singh, Director WWF, and a very dear old friend, the General Handa, General Anuj Mathur, Colonel Kinney. Thank you all for taking the time out to be here to listen to a very abstruse subject. But let me assure you, I hope to take you on a fascinating voyage of discovery today. It has been for me such a fascinating voyage, and I hope I can take you along. So, this photograph before you is the area of the Dachin Marwa area in Kishtwar. In the year of the Lord 2000, I was posted there as the sector commander of the Rashtriya Rifles, engaged in very, very tough counter-terrorist operations. In those days, I'm talking of the turn of the century, Kishtwar was the toughest area to serve with, both in terms of the terrain, valleys 7,000 feet, ridgelines 14, 15, 17,000 feet, one of the major mountain peaks like Sickle Moon, etc. are there. And I had to conduct these counter-terrorist operations there at the time when it was the worst affected district in this part of the south of the Pir Panjals. Now, when I had to conduct operations in an area which is Dachin Marwa, which is 2 days march from the roadhead, right? And it is a dense forest. You can be ambushed any part of that, trail that goes through that forest. So we had stopped going by road after so many ambushes. We stopped moving on ground. We had a heli-maintained post at Navapachi. And there we used to conduct from there as a base, conduct heliborne operations to catch the terrorists by surprise. And then I ran and I was flying over this river, turquoise blue river, crystalline stream of pure joy. So I asked which river is this? So the map gave it as Maru Sudhar. And somehow I was so fascinated, I came back and I went into, the historical details, called the local scholars. They told me this is the Marud Vridha. The Nadi Sukta of the Rig Veda has, mentions amongst the great rivers of India. Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Shutudri, Asikani, Vitista. It mentions Marud Vridha. Now, when you see the Marud Vridha, it's not a particularly big river. It's a very small stream. So I was wondering, why is it part of the Nadi Sukta? So when I asked the locals, they told me, sir, the Atharva Veda was received here. This is the Marud Vridha river, now called Maru Sudhar. This is where the Atharva Veda was received. And the Atharva Veda was received by the Atharva Angiras Rishis, right? And Atharva is supposed to have had 20 sons. So there are 20 books in the Atharva Veda. 15 of them are devoted to Brahma Vidya. The Atharva Veda, as Dr. Purnima Bakshi Kanwar just told you, is also called the Soma Veda. The three Vedas, Rig, Sam, Yajur, they are called the Trividya, they stand aside. And the Atharva Veda stands alone. And to just give you an idea of the importance of the Atharva Veda, I'd like to quote from the Shaunak Angira Samvad, the dialogue between the Rishi Shaunak and the great sage Angira. Shaunak asked Rishi Angira, Lord, which is that science, having known which all else is known? That, replied the sage Angira, is the science of Brahman. Having known that, all else is known. Ladies and gentlemen, we at the Terry, I'm already using the plural, thanks to you, to the Vice Chancellor. One of the systems of the areas, disciplines of study is traditional knowledge systems. And the second that he has asked me to work on, the Vice Chancellor, is of course India's energy security. So this is part of the traditional systems of knowledge. And I thought we would kickstart, the contributions here with this study. Take a look at this. This is a photograph of the same river from the helicopter. And this is when we had gone for one of the heliborne operations to kill terrorists. That is where one had a look at this river. Here's another shot of this river. There's a close-up one when after the rains, so it has got a grayish color. But the turquoise blue stream stands out in this particular picture. You see? Now, right. Why was I interested in the Atharva Veda then? My primary job was to kill terrorists. To kill terrorists, you have to operate at night because no operations take place there by day. So the whole day's work or the night's work begins at about 8 o'clock. And most of the encounters take place around 1:30, 2 in the morning, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. And the crises occur at 4:35 in the morning. कि सर एक सिविलियन मारा गया, 2 हो गया, वो गया. So rather than being woken up in the middle of the night, I made it a practice to stay awake the whole damn night. Let the operations be over and then start late the next day. But be alert before you get caught by surprise, by some strange occurrings. And the only way to stay awake is to read. The other way to stay awake is to drink rum, but since I do not drink, so so that route was closed. But I found that the best way to either to read or to write. So we used to have the radio sets on, crackling, crinkling all the while you were following what is happening, which column has reached where and who's shooting at whom, and in between you were thinking of this. There were 2 plants that I was working on. There are 2 plants of the Indic civilization, of the Indic lore. One of them is Soma, and the other is the Ashwath tree, the Kalpa Vriksha. These 2 plants fascinated me. What was their botanical identity? I think one of the weaknesses of Indian scholarship today has been that we haven't worked out what was the botanical identity of these plants. So far, so after so many years of work and study, we still haven't been able to work out which were really these plants. So one, as I said, was the Soma, and this is one of the candidates of the Soma plant. The other was the Ashwath tree with roots above and branches below. The Ashwath tree. These 2 plants have been my life's work. They have been fascinating for me. And here are 2 people who I owe a hell of a lot in terms of trying to unravel the identity and the nature of the 2 most important plants of the Indic civilization. On the right is my guru, Swami Pranavananda Saraswati. Ladies and gentlemen, he was an engineer. He was a manager in a multinational corporation. At the age of 27, he chucked it all up to retire to a dense forest in Maharashtra between the Ajanta, the Ellora, and the Pitangalya Vihar, Buddhist caves. It's a dense forest. It is the Tapovan. Tapovan means a forest of meditation, right? And he built a grass-roofed hut there. And for 12 years, he meditated in that forest. There were tigers, there were cheetahs, there were panthers, there were the cobras, kraits, you name it. He stayed in that forest, a true sage of the forest. And ladies and gentlemen, India is a civilization of the forest. All our rishis, all our sages, they did not base themselves in the temples in the middle of the town or the city or the village. They went off to the forest And they stayed with the plants, with the trees, because the trees gave them tranquility. The plants gave them peace. And when you live in this ecosphere, when you live with nature, the secrets of consciousness automatically, are unveiled before you. On the other side is Mr. K.M. Ved, a botanical scientist at the Forest Research Institute of India. It was his life's work to work on these two. He was also a great photographer, and he had done a series on the orchids of India, which were turned into stamps. And they are still collector's items. He was a great photographer, as he was a great scholar, a great researcher, and his life work was around these two plants. And I'll try and share those works with you because he died before he could publish them. And it was my commitment to him that, you couldn't let this die out. You could not let this work, this scholarship just die out unknown, unsung. So this is with reverence to these two great personalities because of whom we are covering this. What is this SOMA? We've heard so much about it. We all know about it. But what was SOMA? Let me just quote two verses from the Rig Veda. Oh, this wondrous, lustrous, unending fountain of the life force, this benign power that shines through the golden rays of the sun. Look at the beauty in this language. There's some of the best poetry in the world, really, and one of the earliest poetry. This is from the 9th mandala of the Rig Veda. Father of the gods, progenitor of the morning force, mainstay of the sky, SOMA envelops himself all around with the rays of the sun. The SOMA is reflected in the sun. SOMA is also reflected in the moon. There are two types of SOMA. The solar SOMA and the SOMA of the moon. Someshwar, Soma Deva. Shiva is the Lord of SOMA. So, when delving into SOMA, it is a world by itself. There is the botanical SOMA, the version of SOMA as a psychotropic plant. There is the biological concept of SOMA as endogenous. Endogenous means it is produced by my own brain and body. It's nothing exogenous. It doesn't come from outside. It's not a psychotropic plant that I ate, a mushroom that I chewed, or any wine or a ephedra. It is something when I meditate, the brain secretes the enkephalins, the opiates of the brains. The brain secretes DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is now called the God molecule, and which gives you mystic insights. I'll talk a little more on this endogenous aspect of SOMA. And lastly, there is the meta concept of SOMA. Agni Somatmakam Jagat. Agni Shomiya Jagat. Rudra Shomiya Jagat. This is verses from the Atharva Veda, which say that this world, this entire cosmos is formed of two types of energies. One is the Agni of energy, the energy which is Agni, and the other is Soma. I shall talk of them a little bit more later. The quantum Soma, Soma of sight, this was in my first book. I'll leave them because we don't have that much time. So at the physical level, let's talk of the botanical Soma first. It is said to be a psychotropic plant that induced great ecstasy and euphoria. It made the person ingesting the Soma highly creative and provided him great insights. The Rig Vedic verses were said to be composed or received under the inebriation of Soma. I am drunk on Soma, right? If you remember, there is a little parable from the Sikh religion. Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he was invited to the court of Babur, and he wanted to hear him. He had heard a lot about him. So they discussed. And then Babur was so impressed that he says, oh, very nice, get me a bowl. So they got him a bowl and he wanted to pour him some wine and give it to him with his own hands. Now, from the Mughal emperor, that was supposed to be one hell of an honor. But Guru Nanak refused. So, there was a murmur of horror in the court. Look at this fakir. he's saying no to the emperor. The emperor with his own hand is pouring him the wine, and he says, the emperor's one eyebrow shot up. He said, "You don't drink?" He said, "No, I do." He said, "You do? Does this not meet your choice or this thing? You tell me. You are in the court of the Emperor Babar. You tell me which wine, from where it will be produced before you right now." So in response, he gave him that very famous quote, which is, it's a shloka in the Shabad, in the Guru Bani. Naam Khamari Nanaka Chadi Rahe Din Raat. He says the wine that you take, you get a hangover and then it sort of wears off. But the wine that I take is perennial because it is endogenous. It comes from within. I'm trying to explain what is meant by that. Not only was Soma required by the sage, by the rishi, it was equally required by the warrior, because you'll be wondering what brought you to Soma. So instead of drinking rum before the battle, the ancient warriors used to go in for this. You see, it is an opiate of the brain. It is an opioid chemical which is secreted by the brain itself. Therefore, it is non-addictive. Therefore, it deals with pain. Not only it deals with pain, it takes away all fear on the battlefield. All fear, all pain. Now imagine a soldier, all fear, all pain gone. Who can stop him? Who can stop that guy? And therefore, it was not only the sages who were craved for Soma, also the warriors. Indra, the war god Indra of the Vedic pantheon, is supposed to have drunk Soma and killed Ahi, Vritrasur, the dragon. 3 chalices of Soma and he slaughtered because he lost all fear. So imagine this kind of a psychotropic plant, and the 9th mandala of the Rig Veda is full of this. There are some more shlokas from the Veda. The glorious drop I have drunk has set me free in an incredible wideness of being. King Soma, stretch out our lifespans as the sun stretches out the days of spring. Not only was this supposed to make you mystic, creative, make you lose fear, make you overcome pain, but it lengthened out your lifespan. Won't you want it? This is the fountain of youth, right? Stretch out our lifespans as the sun stretches out the days of spring. O blissful Lord, fill our hearts with thy nectar of bliss, which uplifts the soul on its spiritual streams of ecstasy to those heavenly heights of bliss. Yoked to the melodies of the music of the spheres, Soma flows silently like the waves of a river. The river speeds up like a chariot to shower its gifts of ecstasy to all. Its voice is heard by the multitudes. Ladies and gentlemen, when I used to, every year we get 2 months of leave in the army. In that you can grow your hair, become a hippie. Nobody gives a damn. So I used to go to my guru's ashram and spend time in meditation. And I had an experience of Soma. And the first thing that I felt when that experience happened was a river of joy has erupted in your heart. Ecstasy. You see, amazing experience of intense ecstasy. And the river thing comes through. So the moment I read this verse in the Veda, river of joy, my mind went back to that tinkling river of joy. The word that had come to my mind was Kailing Chu. That is the Tibetan river of happiness, which flows near Lhasa. Tinkling sound of that river of joy that flows in your heart, perennial. This is wonderful poetry. You can spend a lifetime enjoying this poetry. So if it was a plant, which was this plant? Won't you want it? Won't you want your life enhanced? All the Dirghajivis of the Indian civilization, Parshuram, my ancestor, is supposed to be one of them. I mean, they're supposed to have, Parshuram was around in the times of Lord Ram. He was around in the time of the Mahabharata. So that is hundreds of years. So how did he do it? I mean, which is this plant? Incidentally, the Chinese emperor, Shi Huangdi, he had sent an expedition to South America because they wanted to this Ling Chi, this this psychotropic plant which gives you, enhances your life, right? Not just confined to the Indian tradition. So there are three views on what is the botanical identity of this plant. There is that German botanist, Gordon Wasson. He, of course, then went to the United States. He's done a lot of work on this one and on South American psychotropic plants, right? He said it is Amanita muscaria, or the fly agaric mushroom of Siberia. The Siberian shamans have this mushroom and go into ecstasy, right? So he said this is this. We have our own Rajesh Kochar. He has identified it as an ephedra bush found in Iran. Eichson, a British botanical scientist, he also says it is an ephedra bush found in Iran, Afghanistan, and Kashmir. And then, of course, we had K.M. Ved. He says, no, the Vedas call it Som Lata. It is not a mushroom. It is a creeper plant, green creeper plant, succulent plant. So let's just have a look at the three candidates. This, I said, is an amazing mushroom. By the way, I've seen it. Nilgiris, I was posted at the staff college in Wellington. And one of the days, my son Aditya, who's here, he was taking a shortcut from the golf course and staff college, those of you who remember, up towards that war memorial. And suddenly under the pine trees, he found this. So he came back home and told me, Dad, that book that you were reading about, I've seen those mushrooms. And they are aplenty around Paikara Lake. Wherever there are pines, you'll find these mushrooms, right? So this was one candidate. And what his methodology was, he translated the verses from the Vedas, which deal with Soma. And then from them, he tried to build a morphological picture. Asuric color is the red color. Sloma sloughs off the Asuric color. He envelops himself all around with flaming red. So he based it on this. But the others disagreed, and this is the other plant, which is the ephedra. And this bush is found in Afghanistan, it's found in northwestern Kashmir, Ladakh, Tibet, and this is an ephedra bush. And the thing that the Chinese called it mohang. If you take it, it takes away sleep. You are always alert and awake, and you get the high of ecstasy. So they said it is this, and then, of course, this is the version, this is the version of, not Ved, this was actually a British botanical scientist who had called it Sacrostema. This is a creeper, succulent creeper. Ved's version photographs he had, but those are lost. Unfortunately, those photographs are lost. But these were the three candidates of Soma. Now, the Indus Saraswati civilization, right? They have found these terracotta dolls. And on the heads of those terracotta dolls, do you see this? You see those mushrooms. And those are those red Amanita muscaria mushrooms, right? If you see around her head, you see these, these are mushrooms. These are not discs. These are the Amanita muscaria mushrooms. These were found in the Saraswati Valley. Once again on the left, you see the fertility goddess with that in the Saraswati Valley with the mushrooms on her head. And on the right side, this is South American. You see the mushroom on top of the head? They used to use more psilocybin, right? And this is the psilocybin mushroom in the center. There are some more South American mushrooms, and this is the Amanita muscaria. Just see this. On the head of this man is the Amanita muscaria mushroom, right? And here is also the mushroom, the psilocybin mushroom. That means all your illumination, all insights, mystic, come from these mushrooms. And in this photo, you see a man a shaman turning into a jaguar. The Germans have this. We all have our own family of animals. The Germans use the word wolf, Steppenwolf. The German animal, which is supposed to be their kind of totemistic animal, is the wolf. Just like Hamara has Singh. So Rajputs, Jats, Sikhs, they'll call themselves Singh to imbibe the the qualities of that animal. In South America, it is the jaguar. And in the South American lore, the shaman can turn into a jaguar and kill. In the German lore, that that man, the shaman, can turn into a wolf, hunt, kill, prey. So you see all this in these photographs, and these are mostly the works of. Now, mushrooms have been there. Like it is said, they were hidden in plain sight. Right? Now, here you see the photographs of the Buddha, with a chhatri on top. Now, generally, it was thought ki umbrella hai. You look closely, it is a mushroom. Because even the Buddha experimented with mushrooms. He experimented with blue lotuses and lilies as psychotropic plants. Because he said there is nothing, we'd like to check and experiment for ourselves. And in this photograph also you see the mushroom. And in this is a South American photograph, you see the mushroom psilocybin, so clear onto the right side if you see, right? So that is the lore of the mushroom in this thing. Now, what about the biological theory of the endogenous theory of SOMA? My guru, Swami Pranavananda Saraswati, based upon his experiences and those experiences that I personally have had, it is more endogenous. When you close your eyes, you mimic death, right? When you close your eyes to meditate, you see darkness. Death and darkness are the same thing. And you fool the brain into secreting. The brain secretes these endorphins when it thinks the body is dying or it's facing a life-threatening situation. You are attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. So you can get so confused in this thing, you see, but the saber-toothed tiger is attacking your family. So that is the time when these endorphins flow and that man stands up instead of fight, flight. That either or of fight, flight, he chooses fight. He picks up that burning faggot of fire and he fights the tiger. Or he uses that flintstone, he fights the tiger to save his family. How does he get that courage? By the flow of endorphins. How does the flow of endorphins come? When there is a life-threatening situation. When you meditate, you fool the brain into thinking, I'm going. And the brain secretes these chemicals. The brain secretes these chemicals which give you ecstasy, which give you a high, which give you euphoria, not only endorphins, serotonin, norepinephrine, right? Dopamine. These are all neurotransmitters which give you a high. So the cocktail of endorphins, dimethyltryptamine, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, they give you that high. They give you that ecstasy. They give you that creative insight. And they make you fearless. And over a period of time, if you sustain this, they will lengthen your lifespan. If for nothing else, if you want to hang around longer, well, then go in and do meditation and let this secrete in your brain. The other plant, famous plant, is the ashwath tree, with roots above and branches below, right? And now I'll just give you some of this. This is from the Taittiriya Upanishad. Urdhva moolam avakshakam. Urdhva moolam avakshakam, with roots above and branches below. The man who knows the tree with roots above and branches below fears death no more. That was the importance of this plant, right? The Katha Upanishad says, Urdhva moolam avakshakam esa swatah sanatana. Roots above and branches below, this is the eternal Ashwath tree. That alone is the pure one. This is Brahman. That is the nectar. Nothing surpasses this. This verily is that. Tat, ye wo hai. Tat is a very important word in the Vedas. That, tat. The Gita, if you read the 15th chapter, first shloka, Urdhva moolam madham shakham shatatam parushvasme davandasi yasya paranani yastam vedaso Veda with roots above and branches below. The Ashwat tree is indestructible. Its leaves are the hymns. He who knows this, he knows the Vedas. This is the importance that the traditional knowledge systems gave to these two plants. Why the hell haven't we studied them? I mean, why do we have to hang on to the coattails of the Brits, right? My guru had these planted in his ashram. This is a baby tree, by the way. You know, this is a baby Ashwath tree. And doesn't it look like roots above and branches below, right? And Mr. Ved, the botanical scientist, he was trying to unravel, ye ped hai kaun sa? Is it the bargad, roots above and branches below? But the bargad is called the Nyagrod in Sanskrit. And in Vedic Sanskrit, it's not Ashwath, it is the Nyagrod, the people. People doesn't have roots above and branches below, you know. So when he went to the Ellora caves, this is a statue of the Indrani. Just take a look at this statue, it's very interesting. This is a statue of the Indrani from Ellora, the Jain caves in Ellora. And she is seated under the Kalpa Vriksha. Now, if you see this statue, you know, every trinket, the mala, everything is so beautifully etched, so clearly etched because it is done from live, you know, models. So Ved said, if the lady or if the Devi has been so beautifully and so realistically portrayed, every trinket of her, every bangle of her has been so elaborately done. This is, you can't, I wish we could expand it, but you can see this. He said, then that would apply to the tree also. So he started looking for morphological clues in this sculpture of the tree. If you see, the leaves are in bunches of 5, right? And if you see the fruits, some of them are like brinjal and some of them are like small little mangoes, right? And he was wondering, which tree is this? So they told him this is mango. He said, mango doesn't have huge ones like that, you know. So one day he was, after days of study, pondering over this kind of conundrum, he walked out from the Ellora caves. And at the entrance of the Ellora caves are 2 trees. They're the baobab trees, right? And they had these fruits. You see these fruits? एक तो साहब आपका लौकी जैसा है, एक आपका ब्रिंजल जैसा है, और at the same time छोटा छोटा इतना मैंगो जैसा भी होगा. Now in any other tree, at the same time all the fruits are the same size, roughly the same shape, roughly the same shape and size. This is the only tree that you will find which has fruits of different types and different sizes at the same time growing on the same tree, and they have a velvety cover, velvety sheen. This is waterproof. This tree, if it falls into the ocean, can drift for miles and miles, and it has reached from Africa to Australia. It is also found in Australia. And this tree is called the African baobab tree. Digitale, I'm forgetting that Latin, but I'll just adino SOMA, So this tree lives for 5,000 years. Iska jo girth hai is 80 to 100 meters. And in the drought season and the rainy season, iska jo center hota hai, wo hollow ho jata hai. And it stores water like a well. कुएं जैसे इसमें वो जो है वो पानी इसके अंदर स्टोर होता है. आप देख रहे हैं. एंड क्या हुआ, वो कहते हैं कि sometime it must have happened that a thirsty traveler in the desert, he found this tree, he sat below it to try and get some rest. I wish I could get some water. And sometimes this water, when the pressure gets too much, bursts from the side like a fountain. So quite obviously he would have called it the wish fulfilling tree. पानी दे दिया साहब, पानी मांगा, पानी मिल गया. And the fruit you can eat 24/7, and इसकी जो छाल है, जैसे भोजपत्र होता है ना, they use it as cloth. They wave it as cloth, the African tribes, right? They worship this tree. They worship this tree. And did you notice one thing? If you see this tree shape, this is the shape of a neuron. And this neuron has been wrongly sketched. It has an axon-like root, tap root जैसा मोटा root होता है. Now let me just show you. This is a young tree which has been uprooted, right? And if you see, this is the tap root. It is exactly like a neuron in shape and in size, right? This is what the equivalent of the neuron. It lives for 5,000 years. You cut half the tree, it will regenerate itself. You remove all the bark, it will regenerate itself. It is like it is immortal. And if you drink the juice of its roots, it strengthens your immune system, strengthens your ability to face this. So these were the two trees. This is what brought me to the Atharva Veda. And then, of course, I followed up further. I just like to sum up this by a few snapshots. There are 4 Mahavakyas in the Vedas, not just in the Atharva, but in all the 4 Vedas. They can be summed up in 4 Mahavakyas. Prajnanam Brahma. Consciousness is Brahma. The second one is I am Atma Brahma. This individual Atman is the cosmic Brahman, right? Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahma. The consciousness within me is the cosmic consciousness. They are the same. Tat Tvam Asi. Tat, I told you, is very important in the Veda. That thou art, wo tum ho. You are that, you see. So these are the 4 Mahavakyas. And why are they important today? What is the hard problem in physics today? You know, the easy problem is how far is the Andromeda galaxy? What is the hard problem? The hard problem that physics is trying to crack today is what is consciousness? How do I see the red in the red flower? This is what the Vedic sages were working on, and they cracked this problem 10,000 years before today, right? This is another Vedic shloka, which is beautiful. And most of the Indian schools of philosophy trace themselves to this one. There are actually 50 allied shlokas, both in the Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda. Dva suparna suyuja sayuja sakhaya samanam vidram paripaspajate taya rupa pippalam swadattayat sannanyo abhichakashiti. 2 birds on a tree, friends, companions, sit on the tree. One eats the fruit. This one is pecking the fruit. The other watches and eats not. Sare schools of philosophy, Dvaitvad, Advaitvad, vagera, they all stem from this, right? And what is the explanation? The friends, companions, 2 birds on a tree. Friends, pippalam, on a pipal tree. They are friends and they are companions. They are equal in status. One is Brahman. He doesn't watch. He just sits and watches. And the other bird, which is the Atman, वो मीठे फल खाता रहता है, कभी मीठे, कभी कड़वे, कभी मुंह बनाता है, कभी खुश होता है. But the other bird just sits and watches. तो बोले साहब, नहीं साहब, द्वैतवाद. एक आत्मन अलग है, ब्रह्मन अलग है, तो द्वैतवाद है साहब. ये दोनों एक बर्ड थोड़ी ना, 2 बर्ड्स. दूसरा बोलता है सजा सखाया, सखा, ये लोग फ्रेंड्स हैं, बराबर के हैं. So they are the same, actually, So all schools of philosophy have come from how you interpret this imagic insight of the 2 birds on a tree. And now I'll tell you something amazing. This insight defines the relationship between Atman and Brahman, that is hologramic. ये जो आप देख रहे हैं, this is a red ruby laser, right? It's a red ruby laser which produces a laser which is monochromatic. It is all in the same wavelength. You see, this light जो इससे आ रही है, it is in all wavelengths. This light which comes from a laser is a single wavelength. That is why it is so strong. It can burn through. Star Wars में आपने laser saber वगैरह देखा होगा. Now, something amazing about the laser. You see, how is a laser formed? This is the laser. You have that laser beam. You split it into 2. One is the original beam. This is called the reference beam. and it goes through one mirror, the other mirror, and goes onto the plate, photographic plate. The other beam is put through the object. यहाँ पे टमाटर दिखाया है, मिर्च दिखाई है, whatever. So this is scattered, this scatters on the object. उसके जो diffraction pattern होता है, that is recorded on the photographic plate, and so is this. Now the amazing point of a hologram, that forms the hologram. What is the amazing quality of the hologram? You know, when I was serving in the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, there is that DRDO lab there. So I wanted to show my children holograms, you know. So I took them there and they showed us the hologram. वो खुजराहो में एक statue है ना, the girl is writing a letter to her lover. You know, the very famous statue. वो उसका hologram लिया था. हाँ? So उसने क्या किया, हमको hologram दिखाया. You know, he put that laser light through it and we could see it 3-dimensional. फिर उसने उसको ऐसे कर्व किया, ये बाजू बैक, ये बाजू फ्रंट. It was from all round. When I take a photograph, it is just, you know, straight up. It can't take the back of my head. None of these cameras is taking the back of my head. You see, but in that one, it is like all around. जैसे कि आप प्ले डो बच्चे खेलते हैं ना, कोई स्टैचू के चारों तरफ आप प्ले डो लगाइए. It will record that thing from 360 degrees. 360 degrees, right? And then the amazing thing that he did was, he covered that hologram by a cardboard with half. It still produced a whole hologram. It didn't cut the image into half. Then he covered 2/3. It still produced the whole image. Then he covered just little bit left, still produced the whole image. And he said, sir, theoretically, the last molecule of the hologram contains the whole image. Try and register this. The last molecule in the hologram contains the whole image. The Brahman and the Atman is the same. It is hologramic. Now imagine 1948 में Gabor ने बनाया था hologram. उसके पहले, how did the Vedas come to this amazing relationship between, you know, Atman and Brahman as hologramic? And let me tell you the other thing. One bird watches and eats not. This is, sir, the reference beam. The other goes around that objects, gets scattered. It is amazing. You know, that insight, if you can, with the knowledge of modern physics, you can reinterpret it again and again, and you'll keep getting so much out of it. That is the beauty of Vedic language. It is multi-dimensional. It is plastic. It is plastic. The word meanings are not rigidly defined. Let me just give you an example. मैं आपको बोलता हूं जल, इसका मतलब क्या है सर? What is the meaning of the word जल? बताइए. पानी. वो जल गया. वो जल गया. पानी भी है और जल भी है. जल भी बिल्कुल exact opposite भी है. In the same word. So the interpretation of a stanza can be amazing. They can be, it's like a stone thrown into the water. ठीक है साहब? एक सर्कल, दूसरा सर्कल, तीसरा सर्कल. My guru told me, I was asking him the meaning of a particular slok in the Rig Veda. He says the meaning changes for me. When I read it 10 years back, it was different. Today it is different based upon my experience as expanded. In the same word, I can see so many different, interpretation. Go. Go means what? Cow. Go also means a ray of living light. Now just see the interpretation of the same stanza. It is changed 180 degrees opposite. It is a means of encoding meanings into that shloka, which only the person who has experienced can, yeah. And it is so amazing that you are looking at the same stanza and the meaning changes. Ekdam opposite. Only the Vedic language can do that. Reference beam, original beam. And lastly, I would say meta concept of Soma, Agni Somatmakam Jagat. You see, there are two forces of the universe. One is Agni, forces of expansion, explosion, the Big Bang, repulsion, centripetal. Soma, gravitation, attraction, Sneha Tattva. 10 जन्म के बाद अगर आप और मैं मिलेंगे, if we have been father and son, husband and wife, whatever, there will be that sneha tattva that will draw you to one another. If you saw that movie Gravity, you know, how does he through the dimensions get to his family? Because of the soma, the love, the attraction, towards this. So like yin yang, Agni, Soma are the primal pair of Vedic philosophy. Modern cosmologists are saying this is the structure of the cosmos, a giant hologram. The cosmos is a giant hologram, and at one end it spews out the cosmos like the Big Bang. And then, when the cosmos stops expanding, then it starts to contract till it gets to the cosmic crunch. Dark matter, anti-gravity. I mean, it is so strong that gravity sucks in everything into a dwarf star. A giant star becomes a red, dwarf, and then it just vanishes, becomes a black hole. So that is the way this cosmic hologram is going. And this was the kind of description that the Vedas give. They call it Hiranya Garbha. Hiranya Garbha. And at the physical level, you see, this is a man and a woman, of course. You can see their energy field it stems from the heart, goes above your head and comes back from your feet. This is your energy field. This is also mentioned in the Vedas. And then one spiritual concept or one philosophical concept. One is they talk of upward causation and downward causation, right? Upward causation means how is the universe formed? Atoms make molecules, make neurons, make brain, generates consciousness. The opposite, the Indian philosophical concept is consciousness is the ground state of the universe. From consciousness, you will get to, sound and light, creative intelligence, mind, information, energy fields, morphogenetic fields or prana, and then the physical body. Everything stems from consciousness. Consciousness is the ground state of the universe. And now I'll do a little bit of, poetry is one thing, mathematics is another. But do you know that the poetry of the Vedas is mathematical? There is a whole Chanda Shastra. Pingala started that Chanda Shastra, and then Virahanka developed that Chanda Shastra into the mathematical interpretation of that. And he said, that there is that Fibonacci series. Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician. And what is the Fibonacci series? 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. What is the link? Each, is the sum of the previous two. And 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8, 13, etc. All this is the Fibonacci series. Now it is given the name of an Italian, but he also had the decency to admit in his Indorum, he calls it I'm now forgetting that Latin name, Indorum. That is the technique of the Indians, he called it, because they had gotten it from the Arabs gotten it from there. And, and if you represent this in geometrical form, it will take this kind of a spiral curve. You see this? So here is a rectangle. Here is a square, right? And the amazing part is the ratio of 3:2 or 5:3 is called the golden ratio. In anything that is beautiful, you will find the golden ratio. Let me explain. This is, of course, Virahanka theorems in the Vritta Jatiya Samuchaya. The next number is created by joining the previous two. He's given you the basis of the Fibonacci series. And this is used to analyze the chandas, the meters in Vedic poetry. It is mathematical. It's not just beautiful. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. What is beautiful is universally beautiful, right? And ये देखिए sunflower की seed में, you see this spiral, and you see the golden ratio, gives you that spiral, and 1:1.618 is the golden ratio, right? And if you see it in the human body, right? If you measure the body from head to foot, and both arms extended, they are the same, they form a square, right? But what is the difference of the armpit to the elbow? You would think, let us say this is a 1 meter long arm. Kitne pe hona chahiye elbow? You would say 0.5. Wrong, 1.6. Where is the navel, the belly button? 1.6. Where is this knee joint? 1.6. Golden ratio. And now let me show you how this is the golden ratio. Satyam Shivam Sundaram. It strikes you as beautiful. There is that innate mathematics of beauty in this, right? And this is a face that is beautiful, analyzed mathematically. Anybody all over the globe, because of that innate mathematical thing that you have, will find this beautiful. Architecture, you will find the same golden ratio and the Fibonacci series. And in nature, वो cauliflower देख लीजिए. You see, the capillaries of the blood, they branch in the terms of the golden ratio. The tree branches, Y करके जाते हैं. Not only are they beautiful, functionally, that prevents the upper leaves from preventing the sunlight going to the lower leaves. It has got a functional arrangement, and yet it is beautiful. You find it innately beautiful. There is a branch of mathematics called fractals. This is computer-generated fractals. You repeat the same ratio over and over and over again at various scales. It's like the Russian doll. एक डॉल के अंदर दूसरा, दूसरे के अंदर दूसरा, और एक बिल्कुल एक जैसा. So most of nature, the trees, the plants, etc., that you see conform to this beautiful model of beauty. And lastly, I'd like to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we all think कि साहब ये otherworldly है. हम जो Indians हैं, we are slightly, otherworldly, lotus eaters, opium eaters. हम इसमें रहते हैं. Let me tell you something very amazing. In the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, the CIA was very worried that the CIA was extremely worried that the Russians are doing research in, in extrasensory perception and other things, and they are trying to use it for espionage and mind control. They said, whatever it is, we will win this race. And which was the place which they chose to study? They chose India. And you know who was the first person they chose in India? Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Because he had created a specific system of meditation which could be repeatable, which could be learned easily by anyone and put to the test of, modern physiological equipment, ECG, EEG, and what have you, right? And then they studied my guru's guru, Muktananda Paramahansa, at Ganeshpuri. I once went there and I was amazed, 90% of the people there were Goras. Blonde hair, this thing, that thing, वो ऋषि कन्या बनके वो 10 साल, 15 साल जो सीखना था वो सीख के चले गए. If you think your knowledge is useless and stupid, well, you are the loser. These traditional knowledge systems, the foreign people have understood इसमें बहुत कुछ है. They wouldn't have spent taxpayer dollars by the billions to study this. And then they studied a thing, they studied transcendental meditation, Siddha meditation, biofeedback, hypnosis. And then there is a gateway technique which uses different sound frequencies, like we use mantras, right? And that gives them an out-of-the-body experience. And they used these out-of-the-body experiences to spy on Russian nuclear submarines being built in Krasnoyarsk. This is documented, sir. ये डॉक्यूमेंटेड है. आप सोच रहे हैं कि साहब हम फिलॉसफी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. साहब ये it has solid scientific basis and uses. And now I conclude by one of the favorite shlokas, my favorite shlokas. You can all have your favorite shlokas of the Veda. He says, in the beginning of time, Brahman, Jagyanam Brahma, the knower of the worlds, manifested himself by the shining boundaries of that cloud. By the shining boundaries of that cloud, Vena the wise surmised the presence of the sun behind. Few days back, month plus ago, we lost my sister-in-law, my wife's sister. And when last days we were sitting with her in the hospital, my wife and I, and suddenly we looked out of the window of Vedanta. And the clouds, with their edges shining with gold. You cannot see the sun behind the cloud, but by the simataha suruchaha, by the burning margins of that cloud, you can make out the presence of the sun. Similarly, in this world, we cannot see Brahman, but by the burning margins of the cloud, we can infer the presence of Brahman. Thank you so very much.
So I think what we can, she not coming. We can just have this released and then.
It was also an emergency meeting. We got back and
We'll ask the master of ceremony.
May I now request the dignitaries on the dais to kindly release the book SOMA, the physics, philosophy, and poetry of the Atharvaveda. Ladies and gentlemen, we are fortunate to have with us Shri Sanjeev Sanyal. He's a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the PM. He was Principal Economic Advisor to Finance Minister for 5 years. Prior to that, he was with the financial market for 20 years as Global Strategist and Managing Director, Deutsche Bank. He has been a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and has authored a number of books to include Land of Seven Rivers, The Ocean of Churn, and the Indian Renaissance, among others. May I invite Shri Sanjeev Sanyal to kindly give his views.
Good evening. Yeah, good evening, friends. First, let me congratulate General Bakshi for his book. And I'm particularly delighted that he has chosen this subject. So let me explain why. Basically, the Atharvaveda, for some reason, although everybody knows that there are 4 Vedas, but for some reason the Atharvaveda is either reviled or ignored, and very often both. Now, many of the English translations and writers, particularly from the 19th and early 20th centuries, would write in these kind of terms about the Atharvaveda, that it's a book of sorcery, and that it is full of these spells and things like charms and things like that. So you would get the impression that this is not a particularly interesting book. It's some sort of a book of witchcraft or something like that. And of course, given the sort of condescension of 19th century scholarship, and there's some sort of pagan book of charms and sorcery and witchcraft, is the impression you would get. Now, the problem is that even in the Indian tradition, however, the Atharvaveda is sometimes given a bit of a short shrift. Much of the early literature in India tends to suggest that there are in fact 3 Vedas. And so the Rig Veda, which all scholars and all sects consider to be the preeminent Veda. Then there is the Sam Veda, which is effectively actually the Rig Veda set to music. So it's actually it's 80% the same material. So it's not really a new Veda. And then there is the Yajurved, which is actually about the formal system of yajna. So it's the mechanics of the yajna, what you should do, and the chants. Many of them also taken from the Rig Veda, but a lot of it new material. And then it talks about pour the ghee in at this point, etc., etc. And so you figure out the ways of various yajnas are done, and home and various rituals are done. So you have here the Rig Veda, which is original material, Samved, which is 80% the same material set to music, and you have the Yajurved, which is essentially of the mechanics of doing the fire sacrifice. And even as late, and in the context of the times we are talking, this is quite late, you have the Arthashastra of Kautilya, and there also he mentions Trayi, which is the three Vedas. And so somehow, even in the Indian tradition, the Atharva Veda is very often kind of considered not quite a Veda. Now the question is, why is it thought in this way? What is the context of this? Is it the material is somehow not up to speed? Is it a later Veda that was not quite acceptable? I do not have the answers to this, so I'm going to speculate from here on. So, and maybe General Bakshi can agree or disagree with it. My own sense is that we have to think about how exactly the Vedas came to be collected. And so this is my view of how it was. You see, the Vedas are the collection of ideas of different rishis and different schools, which were collected together after the Battle of 10 Kings. So there was this great Battle of 10 Kings in the Rig Veda, where the Bharata tribe essentially defeats these 10 tribes and then a bunch of other tribes as well. But then instead of kind of imposing its own kind of views on everybody, it instead collects the material from all the thinkers of that time, which included, incidentally, the thinkers of all the defeated tribes also. For example, the Bhrigus, who are very important in the SOMA, they're actually one of the defeated tribes. And since my Gotra is a Vatsa, Vatsas are the disciples of the Bhrigus. So they were actually, so I'm descended from the defeated tribes. But what is interesting about this is they are given equal place in the Vedic literature. And they put all their material together. And they, in the last chant of the Rig Veda, they basically say we come together and we give all the gods of everybody a place around the sacrificial fire. And this is in a sense the Vedic contract by which our civilization kind of gets triggered. This is the contract of assimilation as opposed to imposition. So everybody's god has a place around the fire. And of course, this knowledge can keep expanding because we can keep adding new tribes, new ideas, new etc. And everybody's ideas are given a place around the sacrificial fire. So that is the basic conception of Sanatan Dharma. So this is done. Now this same material is put to music. So Samved ho gaya. And then they say we need while all of you are welcome to do your own rituals, we have an agreed set of rituals which unites this new contract. And that is the Yajurved. Now everybody agrees on this. However, there is a large amount of material that is left out because not everything gets collected into this. And my sense is, and that's why I will love to know others' views also, my sense is that this was satisfactory in terms of creating a common minimum program. But the problem was it left out lots of interesting information and knowledge. So what happens is that a few generations, maybe hundreds of years later, the rishis or thinkers of that time, the Atharvans and the Angirasas, who are in some cases the descendants of some of these. So the Atharvans, for example, are descendants of the Bhrigus. They sit down and they say, hey, we have all this extra material. Let us kind of put it together and create this new Veda, the Atharva Veda. Now, this is interesting here because it is quite clear that the Atharva Veda was put together a long time after the first three Vedas. However, at least to my understanding, the language, however, is not too much from a later time. The gods are somewhat similar. The language is somewhat similar. The style of poetry also. And I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but at least just hearing the way it sounds, it is quite distinctly different from later Sanskrit. If you listen, if it's just the sound of epic Sanskrit, the Sanskrit of the Ramayana and Mahabharata is very different from Vedic Sanskrit. And of course, later classical Sanskrit is even more different. So it is very clear from listening to it that this material is not quite older. It is actually contemporary material from the Rig Vedic or some Ved, Yajurved period, but stuff that for some reason was not added into the original common minimum program. So now they put it all together. So now why did they want to collect this material and preserve it for posterity? And by the way, not everybody agreed, because there's some people seem to have till much later did not accept the Atharva Veda as a Veda. So there were people who said, no, they're not a part of this original compilation, let's keep it out. But for whatever reason, there were enough people who said, no, this is Vedic material and we need to preserve it. And it comes across as a rather bit of a mishmash of random things initially, at least. If you read the Atharva Veda, it is really quite a mishmash of things. And if you don't, and I have to say, I have not paid a great amount of attention to it, but thanks to this book, I actually went to the Delhi Gymkhana library and picked out 2 copies of Griffith's translations of the Atharva Veda and went through it while reading the book, so that I had some sense of what is going on. And then I read more widely, and combined with my some previous knowledge I had, I'm coming to the conclusion that this material is a mishmash, I agree, but some of it is quite interesting to me in the sense that some of it is actually quite mundane. In the sense, there is very good poetry, but some of it is, unlike the Rig Veda and the Yajurved, which is all about high philosophy or the high yagyas of the court, or they're asking for victory in battle and things like that. Much of the poetry here is about a young man who wants to, has seen a beautiful woman, and it's a chant to try and woo her, win her the favor of the young lady. There is another one in which you have what sounds like a very early, perhaps Neolithic to Bronze Age person who is learning about agriculture. And there is some stuff on the harvest and so on. There is literature on a young bride who has come to a new home, and she's trying to adjust to the new environment in which she is. So it's very beautiful poetry, but it is, in a sense, a much more, what should I say?
Secular.
Not even secular. It's much more relatable on a day-to-day basis. It is not, as I said, in the Rig Veda, that Indra is trying to destroy Vritra. Here, it's a much more day-to-day. So in a sense, what is happening here is that I think the Atharvans came to the conclusion that, Hinduism doesn't only have to be, or Sanatan Dharma only doesn't have to be the grand framework. It is also a relatable daily religion. This is the religion of daily life and of something more relatable. So what they are doing is taking together this material and putting. So one part of it is this material. Then there is another bit of the material, which is what I think General Bakshi really got into, is the issue about this SOMA. Now, let me say, I don't entirely approve of you thinking about SOMA up in the mountains and not imbibing the rum. It kind of misses the point in some ways. But nevertheless, let's say, it does mention the issue of what this SOMA juice was. Now, this has been, by the way, a long debate going even back to the immediate post-Vedic period, where they're already wondering what the SOMA is. So it's not like we are sitting here at 2023 AD what this is. They were thinking about this in 1500 BC also. They were wondering what on earth this Soma is. And even at that time, there were various theories and views on the matter. But in my view, different parts of the Vedas actually allude to different things. So in fact, there are places where they are clearly pouring this, a lot of in the Rig Veda particularly, Soma is continuously being poured into the fire. There is very little of imbibing. In fact, at least I have, and others may have found more, but I have only found 1 or 2 instances where the priests or human beings imbibe it. They seem to be basically saying, we are giving it to Indra so that he can go and fight Vritra, etc. And so they keep pouring it in. So question is now, what is this? Even in the Atharva Veda, there is a little more imbibing, but there is also a curious chant somewhere where it says that the Soma grows in a cave. It comes out of a cave. I don't know if you came out of this particular allusion. Now the question is, why does it come out of a cave? So one thing that I have been exploring myself is maybe in some places it is this internal light. In some places, maybe it is a plant. But at least in some instances, I think at least, it is a mineral. So let me explain this. You see, where did the Bhrigus actually come from? Because much of this is about the Bhrigus, who are the Atharvans. And the Bhrigus, and this is my own family tradition. As I said, I come from the Bhrigu tradition myself, and my forefathers were actually Rig Vedic scholars, specifically. Their tradition was that the Soma was actually zinc. And why I'm saying this, you see, we call Soma Rasa. And zinc is called Rasika in ancient Sanskrit. And what happens is that this zinc, and if you now think of this as zinc, then they keep pouring this zinc into the fire. So why, and by the way, much of this Soma stuff is related to the Bhrigus. And why are the Bhrigus pouring the zinc continuously into fire? And sometimes they say that we crushed, these stones that we crush. There's a mention of these crushing stones all the time. Now, the usual interpretation is that you have taken the plant, you've crushed it. Now, but they barely mention the plant at all. They actually mention the stones most of the time. So what if actually it is the stone that is the interesting part, in which case it makes sense with the idea of it being a mineral. So what mineral are they taking, crushing and pouring into the fire? So here you have to understand where were the Bhrigus from. You see, the Bhrigu tribe, there are various theories of legends about where they came from. But in the end, they came and settled in southern Haryana. And their hangout was a hill in southern Haryana called Dhosi Hill. You can all go and visit it, by the way, it still exists. Dhosi Hill is an extinct volcano, and it is completely pyramidical. You can climb to the top of it, and there is since it was an extinct volcano, there is a dip, the caldera, and there is a kund there, which still exists. And the story is, and it's a very ancient story, that Bhrigu's, one of his sons was Atharvan, but another one of his sons, who had leprosy, called Chavan. Chavan took a dip in that caldera, the pool, and he was cured of leprosy. And then he became the father of medicine, of Ayurveda. That's why you have Chavanya Prash. And he continued to live there. And they were, and if you read whether the Atharva Veda or even the Rig Veda, you get the sense that the Bhrigus, they were somewhat feared rishis. They're not loved rishis. But why they're feared is because they seem to have this great power of alchemy and chemistry, and they were doing something. They kept pouring things into fire, and everybody was a little afraid of them. So what were they doing? So I actually went to Dhosi Hill, and I stood on top of the hill, and I looked around. Then it clicked in my head what it was. You see, from Dhosi Hill, there is a small valley, and on the other side, there are a bunch of other hills. Guess what hills those are? They are Khetri. Now, Khetri is at the border of Haryana and Rajasthan. And Khetri is even now copper mines.
Yeah.
Now, this is important. We are in the Bronze Age. This is the beginning of the Bronze Age. And the Bhrigus are essentially melting copper. That's the obvious thing to do. These seem to be pouring stuff. Now, there is also an interesting twist here. A little bit further south from here is also one of the few places in the world where zinc is found in a reasonably pure form. And we know for a fact that India was the place where zinc was first sort of smelted or purified. And now there is something here very interesting. You take the zinc and you can make zinc oxide out of it. And this is interesting because you see zinc, when you get it, is a speckled kind of ore. And you crush it. And then there is a system of leaching it using milk into this concentrate of zinc oxide that you get. Now, this zinc oxide, now imagine what is happening. You have the smelter, you have all the copper there, and you're putting zinc into it. Get what you get out of it. You get brass. It's instantaneously a form of bronze. And so what happens is suddenly you have an ability to strengthen. Because copper is a very weak metal. You put a little bit of zinc into it, and it becomes a form of brass or bronze. Now, India doesn't have tin, or very much of it. So the way the ancients must have hardened their copper was almost certainly through using this zinc. Now, as I said, this is one possibility, that what the Bhrigus were doing and why they were feared was basically because they were able to convert. First of all, they were obviously alchemists. They were into Ayurveda and Chavanyaprash and all of this. And they were also had the ability to harden copper into bronze, which was obviously a militarily useful thing. This now relates to another interesting story which also relates to this. You see, there is a very famous story that Vishwamitra once visited Vashishta and Bhrigu. And they were all there is the story that they were all wanted Kamadhenu. And Kamadhenu was able to feed an army. What was Kamadhenu giving? He was giving milk and was able to feed an army. And Vishwamitra and everybody was very annoyed with Vashishta. So what was Vashishta doing? What was this milk? What if it was zinc oxide that could feed an army? That's why it was very, very sought after. So all of this may be people who are early Bronze Age. They are all seeking various kinds of chemical processes. And one of the interesting things they may be doing is the ability to convert first smelt copper, which was still a new technology, and then add zinc to it to harden it, which was a huge military advantage. So these might be one of the other things. That it is also interesting that the Bhrigus then moved southward for a variety of reasons and ended up along the Konkan coast. The descendant of Bhrigu was Parashuram. Who is Parashuram? Parashuram is the wielder of the iron axe. Again, you can see the technology change. So the Bhrigus are continuously doing these changes, metallurgical transformations, and they're also somewhat, as I said, feared because they go to war with various people utilizing these metallurgical capabilities. They're also experimenting in science. They're also experimenting in... So they were basically the alchemists, philosophers, scientists of the rishis. The other rishis were more philosophical. The Bhrigus are not particularly philosophical. In fact, if you see in southern India, particularly an image of Vishnu, you will see a foot very often on the chest. That is because Rishi Bhrigu once turned up and kicked Lord Vishnu as well. So, as you said, the Bhrigus had a bit of a reputation for being
Celebrated temper.
have a bit of a temper. So, but the question is, why were they tolerated? Because despite this rather bad behavior, because combined with this somewhat irascible behavior was also all this technology and creativity and all of these kinds of things they were doing. So this carries on into this very interesting spin in that Bhrigus then ended up, you see, in the Vedic times and even till well into the Puranic era, the Asuras are not seen necessarily as bad gods. They're not devils as later. They're not Rakshasas. the Devas and Asuras are actually two sets of deities. And they are in some tension with each other, it is true, but it is not obvious that they are bad in any way. So the Rudra, for example, is an Asura. Okay, Varuna is an Asura, and so on. And they are in some tension with each other. So they're against each other, but they're not necessarily bad. Now, what is interesting is the Bhrigus end up becoming the gurus of the Asuras. Shukra, for example, is a grandson of Bhrigu, and he is the guru of the Shukracharya. He is the guru of the Asuras. And you can see these people are still migrating south. And they end up ultimately in Kerala. Kerala, by the way, is said to have been brought back from the oceans by Parashurama. And then it comes to be ruled by Raja Bali, or Bali, depending on how you pronounce it. Now, Raja Bali has a guru, Shukracharya. And it's quite interesting that when Vaman comes, Vishnu in the Vaman avatar comes, and he demands that the 3 steps, Shukracharya is actually opposes this. And he says, I'm very suspicious about this Vaman, this dwarf. And so he actually, when Raja is pouring the water to wash his feet, he turns himself into a bee and goes and sticks himself into chokes the pout. And so, of course, Vishnu knows what is going on. So he takes a dhruva, which is a grass, and he pokes it in order to clear the thing. And it actually blinds Shukra. So the Shukra, when you see in the iconography, is always shown with one eye. So he blinds, and so therefore he has to retreat, and the water is flown. And of course, we know that what happens. Ultimately, Vaman asks for the 3 worlds, and Raja Bali gives it to him. For which Onam, by the way, he then gets blessed for having been such a great and generous person. Vishnu then converts him back to his normal form and blesses him that he therefore becomes eternal, and every year he can come back to his kingdom, which is why Onam is celebrated. But what happens to the Bhrigus? So they've gone from Dhausi Hill, made their way to Bhrigu Kachcha, which is Bharuch, which is in Gujarat, fought with the Malwa people, which is the Kartavirya Arjun and the Hayyars, made their way further down south to all the way down to the Kerala, reclaimed it from the sea, picked a fight even with Vishnu, and etc. And there they are kind of stuck because now their king has given away, the Asuras have given away their kingdom. Now, what do? Now, what is interesting is the story takes a very strange turn. So, Shukra and the Bhrigus begin to migrate further back out north. And there is a story that, and I forget who it was, but one of the Rajas or one of the Devas misbehaves with the daughter of Shukra. And Shukra then decides that this land has now been taken over by the Devas, and he migrates westward. And he disappears from Indian history. But he turns up in Iranian history. Shukracharya is called the Kavi. And the Ahura Mazda and the Shukra tradition, the Ahuric tradition, then becomes a part of what we now know as Zoroastrianism. And all of the things are suddenly you have a mirror image in Iran. So the Devas become the bad, the Asuras become good. The Soma, but you still have the Soma, Homa, you still have the fire sacrifices and all of this. And what is interesting in all of this is that who is Shukra? Shukra is Venus. And increasingly, Venus and Shukra, they take on the idea of worshipping female deities. In Iran, they begin to worship Anahita. And this idea moves further and further westward, and you end up with Venus. And then ultimately, with Freya. And all of these, interestingly, all the way back to India, relates to Friday. Friday is named after Freya. Shukravar is named after. And in the Middle East, Friday remains the holy day. It's all to do with the Asuric tradition. And so this is an interesting line of thought, which I have been following. I just gave you a gist of it. There is lots of interesting pieces that I have not talked about, but it all relates ultimately to a better understanding of the Atharva Veda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You, sir, that very insightful perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Prateek Sharma, the Vice Chancellor, Terry School of Advanced Studies, hardly needs an introduction. Nevertheless, he is an alumnus of Delhi College of Engineering. He did his PhD in Environmental Engineering from IIT Delhi. He has more than 27 years of research and teaching experience. He has authored 2 books on vehicular pollution modeling and has written several papers in high-impact academic journals. May I now call upon him to say a few words?
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. After such a wonderful presentation made by Bakshi, first of all, I was just wondering what to say, and especially after what Mr. Sanyal spoke. And when actually I was given this duty of, this honor being bestowed upon me to actually speak something about the book, I was just wondering, because what is important is कि मेरी पात्रता भी है कि नहीं है. Because I don't claim to be a scholar of Sanskrit or Vedas or any such thing which General Bakshi has written. But still, the interest that I have in matters on which General Bakshi writes made me dare to actually go through the text and to comment on something about what he has written. And obviously, when the book was handed to me, the first question was basically why Atharva Veda only? And that was the curiosity basically that actually crept in my mind. And in fact, I thought, because the first time I met him, and then when you told me about that, this is the book that he has written and wants to, do this kind of a event here. And when I turned the pages and what General Bakshi mentioned about in his presentation, also followed by Mr. Sanyal, it becomes amply clear, why Atharva Veda. And what I actually, and then again, when I turned few pages and what General Bakshi has mentioned as a 4-year-old, when he experienced the beauty of Kishtwar and the nature that basically, and I believe it's a divine arrangement, which basically his profession brought him back to the same place where actually, something that was created in his mind as a toddler. And again, we are told through this book and through his presentation also that the hymns were basically conceived there and in that particular piece of land. And the most important thing that emerges again and again from the book is this only, that it talks about Brahma Vidya. And we can get into all other things, but the crux of the book is this only: somebody who knows about the Brahm knows everything. And that is what basically, is the takeaway as far as this part is concerned. And tells about, why Atharva Veda, because you may have the Rig Veda, the Sam Veda, and the Yajur Veda, but Mr. Sanyal has spoken much about the Bhrigus and others. What again comes out again in the book is that I only get to know about this only, that Lord Krishna was a disciple of
Ghor Angiras.
And the Brahma Vidya, the best book, the divine book, holy book of Bhagavad Gita actually speaks about this only. And if something if Ghor Agniras had a disciple like Lord Krishna, who is the main through which the song of the divine song is basically spoken in the midst of battlefield. It speaks about the importance of Atharva Veda. And certainly it had to come from a soldier only, because, in our scriptures, the biggest dan is Abhay Dan, and the fearlessness basically. And the fearlessness, and in fact, I would, some wise man has said, if you see the crux of Bhagavad Gita is in one slok only. Klebhyam masam gamaya path naita vibhaddate. Shudram hriday daurbalyam tek uttishth param tak. Yield not to unmanliness, O son of Pratha, ill doth not befit thee. And it is all about this only when we actually cross about, the fear of, and we actually have a realization of the connection between the Atma and the Brahm. And in fact, he has very rightly and very clearly brought in his book, and allegorically he has mentioned, and in fact, I would use another example of that, in defining the self, in which, he took another example of, the fire with which basically a householder saves the life of, his own children, because of because the feeling of the body goes away. I would put it this way that, and this is somehow what I have learned little bit through reading these scriptures only, that, how we progress and how we evolve. Basically, a definition of self becomes, something as we grow, the family becomes a definition of self or man. And then we expand, from family, it becomes the group of friends, then it becomes society, then it becomes, the nation. And a patriot is someone who actually, for whom the self is basically a nation. That is what basically we speak. And when, this expansion becomes global and universal, we become one with the universe. And that is what basically, it's basically mixing of the self, you're one, and then we say Vasudev Kutumbakam, something emerges naturally when, the discrimination between self and the others basically decimates. And the duality goes away, and the Advaitvat, which again and again comes through Upanishads and through various Vedas. Bhagavad Gita is the classical example of that, amplifying again and again through different verses. And that basically, I was just wondering, and then, while turning the pages, I got this realization that again and again, this is what is emerging in the Atharva Veda, the Vidya of Brahm, which the great disciple Shwetketu got just by when his teacher asked him to go from places to places, and ultimately when he came back, he says, "O Shwetketu Tattvamasi," and that is what he ended with his, the presentation by saying this only, and Aham Brahmosmi, that was the crux. So the importance of this book becomes so much, and again, there are certain abstractions, especially for the uninitiated. And especially when these abstractions, the connection between Atma and Brahm, it becomes very difficult to comprehend for the uninitiated individuals. The very important, the concept of hologram that he brought out, and at the molecular level. So in terms of conceptualization, I think it's a huge contribution, and which is actually coming through the book. And then again, he talks about the Fibonacci sequence and the golden rule. Interestingly, before we started this, and I was having this discussion with him, in 2014, the Fields Medal was won by an Indian, Professor Manjul Bhargav. And it was basically on the number theory only. And his motivation actually came from his knowledge of Sanskrit. And incidentally, and in fact, the book quite clearly brings out the Chand Vidya and the manner in which these meters have been created in the Vedic rhymes and verses, which was captured by Manjul Bhargav, and the sunflower picture that he showed and the other beautiful sequences that he showed were actually, he learned, and through Sanskrit, basically, he developed interest in mathematics. And interestingly, he also happens to be a tabla player. And a Fields Medal is actually even more difficult to get than a Nobel, because you get a Fields Medal after 4 years. And I was just wondering, asking, because when the book came and I saw the title Physics, Philosophy and Poetry. So I was wondering whether, General Bakshi has touched upon these issues or not. And so wonderfully, I could, to my pleasant, pleasure, I would say, and it was very well documented. And I was wondering, the expense of scholarship that one finds in the book is immense. The manner in which everything is being captured, because at times, even the manner in which the English poetry is, the meter of English poetry, even somebody who has no knowledge of the meter of poetry, that has been explained in the book quite eloquently. And plus another thing, about the Vedic quantification of these numbers in terms of the verses which form the various Vedas. So that also he has tried to put, and anybody, and it's a huge contribution for somebody who wants to learn fundamentals of exactly the science behind these Vedas, and what our rishis were able to reach that, the attainment of those spiritual heights, which obviously only somebody who has reached those levels can understand. And for ordinary minded people, you have these mathematics and physics principles, because in order to bring those principles to the level of individuals, you need to convert those into equations. That is for the average minded people. But what these people had done was this, to reach that level and convert those in the form of verses, and the manner in which those verses and the hymns have translated across generations after generations, in the absence of written form, also speaks highly about the knowledge and the I would say the skill that these people had developed. And that is something is missing in our society, because somehow we are missing on the scientific aspects, and we are considering only these as some ritual exercise done by pandits and others. And therefore, what I'm trying to convey is, through this book, is a huge contribution for anybody who wants to take a scholarly work in order to understand the abstracts hidden in the Atharva Veda, which otherwise one gets confused in the labyrinths of verses, and somebody thinks about, it's about Karm Kand, or somebody thinks about that, okay, this is about marriage, it's in which he has quite clearly about the mandals he has mentioned about. So one doesn't want, so what the crux one loses. So this book is a huge contribution in terms of, demystifying the labyrinth and the confusion or abstraction that basically otherwise for an average minded person would be difficult to comprehend. So that would be the first step to move forward in order to actually, the wide spectrum of knowledge that exists in Atharva Veda, and obviously it will motivate readers to read further about the other Vedas which are there, and to look these Vedas with a different perspective. And especially, again, in one place he speaks about the various koshas, which again is very difficult to comprehend. When you talk, which is about the super mind and the mind, and the third thing, sir, I'm forgetting, pranic kosh. And then comes to the Annamaya kosh, which is basically we manifest as molecular bodies. So the important thing is this, that our existence exists at the fourth level only, but somehow we are not able to have these three koshas which are there. If we have the realization, certainly that fearlessness will come, and the abhay will come. And the moment abhay comes, we get we get rid of the bondages that exist with the body. And basically bondage of body basically is the realization that the soul that resides in our in the cave of this body, heart, is basically something which is eternal, something which very nicely he portrays as a holographic, which otherwise is very difficult to understand. And therefore, as a first step, certainly, if somebody has a first read of this book, the enormous amount of content that exists in the Veda itself has been the appropriate phrase I would say, the density of information in the book is immense, and General Bakshi has been able to very successfully and made the knowledge available in a very easily comprehensible manner. That is the biggest contribution I would consider as far as the book is concerned. And again, I was just going through some of the, again, my favorite remains the Abhayam Mitrat, Bhayam Triat Bhayam, Gyatat Bhayam Parukshat. That is the crux. And in fact, Abhayam Natmayam Divanaha Sarva Asha Mam Mitram Bhavantu. And may we be free of fear from our friends and foes alike, and free of fear from the known and unknown enemies, and may we be free of fear from all directions, may all the directions be my friend. And this is what, as ancient civilization, we exist. And if we exist because of these things only. So many people have come and tried to destroy the civilization. If we stand, it is because of the sheer strength of generation after generation in the absence of the written text. These things have been passed upon through the ancient sages, which now fortunately is available in the form of documented books, which again are widely spread, and one, unless and until one is spiritually enlightened, will not be able to have a grasp of those things. I repeat once again, unless and until somebody is spiritually elevated, will not be able to have a grasp of all those things. Well, one would analyze those things in a very historical, neutral, secular manner, and one would not get the rust of that, the huge, I would say, the treasure that basically resides in these Vedas, and which, in fact, the book basically takes us one step forward in order to demystify and help us to maneuver around through this labyrinth of vast verses which come under the 20 mandals or the 20 books of Atharva Veda. And also, I would certainly, after reading not the whole book, but the certain initial, obviously, the best is to, as a statistician, I know the best way is to do sampling in order to know the population. So the introductory chapter was something really which provides the insight about the book. And from that, one gets to know that it motivates you to actually read more and more in order to actually have a grasp of so many things about the poetry, the science, the mathematics, and the philosophy. People think that this is only a philosophical text, but the rich amount of poetry, the mathematics, the physics that resides in this. Again, he speaks about the SOMA and Agni, which again, as somebody, in the quantum theory, when we come to at the quantum number level, so again, it's basically existence of, the spin quantum number, the existence of, and again, protons, neutrons, all those things basically relate very well. And basically somebody who has done a little bit of science will get, okay, this is something really special. I need to go further deeper. It is only not at the material level only. It goes much more deeper into more, just not this material level only. Something more spiritual is there, which takes you to a blissful existence of what the wise people say, Satchit Anand. And the feeling of Anand only comes when you get rid of the attachments that you have. And certainly this basically, again, I'll come back to the Abhay part. And if you become independent of of your body, and you realize that you are a soul, then certainly it takes you towards moksha. And moksha is nothing else but this only, that okay, you are just leaving the body as just we change our clothes. And if we speak like this, but obviously we have not realized. And once this realization comes, then certainly we will be in that state of bliss in all times to come. Everybody gets certain moments of experiencing that bliss for a few seconds or few somebody more, initiated would get for hours, for days, and somebody for, months. But somebody who is Brahmgyani is situated in that blissful form. And it's such a, I would say, honor, to have General Bakshi here. And, the kind of scholarship that he brings on table, as somebody who has spent, most of his life as in academics, writing 1 or 2 books again is a Herculean task. And 45 books, and ranging from such wide range of subjects, from environmental consciousness to SOMA VEDA to, and the other book that I saw in which I saw the Schrodinger equation is cover page. So one wonders, what kind of knowledge this person brings on table. That is amazing. And I consider this to be certainly a blessing from the divine, that the divine chooses few to actually have, through them it manifests, and we are just simply nimitt through which the divine manifests. And I consider this event also as part of that divine arrangement only. Today being Thursday, Guru's Day, and and also
Kal Shukrawar.
I don't. So one after the other. And so again, so I somehow I would ask General Bakshi about this. Certainly, this book, has been an evolution journey for him also. While writing, I'm quite sure that he must have evolved much better, and in terms of spiritual realization, and that basically is running through the text. And it's such a pleasure and honor to host such a wonderful event at our campus. And I would thank General Bakshi to giving us this opportunity to actually.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll also shortly be joined by somebody from Srimati Meenakshi Dikshit's office. She brings a message with her. In the meantime, may I please request the publisher, Shri Ankur Pathak of Garuda Prakashan, to give the vote of thanks.
Shall we have the question?
All right. If
After
there are
that,
any
I have to leave in about 15 minutes.
questions for the
I'd like to
panel,
interact more with you.
Sanyal, see, well read that you are very deep into, spirituality. And I'm also inspiration from Vachakula, from land of Parshurama.
Yes.
One question is that the contribution of Veda Vyasa and his 4 disciples in deciphering these Vedas. And why was as a government, like, we don't have a Vedic science research? That was the first question. And second question is, you to take the divinity from India towards West further. I also think that is it all, is it to mention about the natural calamities or maybe continental drift which happened over a period of time, that it is summarized and maybe recorded in Vedic or maybe some other form.
So let me say that continental drift, etc., are totally different time scales from any human time scale. So then you're dealing with dinosaurs and stuff like that. In human time scales, there is certainly all this movement that happens, and the Veda Vyasa's contribution is that effectively all this material was put together in one big pile after the, let's say, the Battle of 10 Kings and Bharata basically collected all this material. They collected into one big pile. So what Veda Vyasa is supposed to have done, the word Vyasa literally means editor. He seems to have taken the important parts that he thought were the key parts and put it into the regression. This is the key important. And it's quite interesting. The arrangement of it is not random. The very first stanza of the Rigveda starts by saying, I am paying homage to both the ancient rishis and to the modern rishis. So even at that time, which is very important because it sets in motion a very important part of the Sanatana tradition, that it is unlike, say, the Abrahamic tradition where there is one prophet and it is static. it sets in motion the idea that there is continuous addition of knowledge because no new rishis come, new ideas, new thinkers come. What are the rishis? They are great poets and thinkers, philosopher poets. So first of all, it immediately says that this is an evolving tradition. And the last chant of the Rig Veda is that we all have space for all the gods around the fire, as long as, of course, you have to accept everybody else's gods. And this idea of assimilation and evolution, therefore, is something that is there already in the Veda. But Vyasa clearly brings it out at the beginning end because he's the guy who's putting the whole thing in arrangement, right? So he edits it so that it's clear that this is an opening up of an evolving thing. And you can think of the Rig Veda as the operating system of the Sanatana Dharma. You can add new apps, you can remove apps, but the operating system is this. Now, then he separates out the ritualist parts and puts them in the Yajurveda. Then he takes some of this and puts it to music, which is the Samveda. Now, it seems to me that there is a whole bunch of stuff he just left out, which is actually the Atharvaveda. That is my theory, as I said in the beginning. I have no way of proving this. But it seems the Atharvan material is then preserved by the descendants of the Bhrigus, who, for whatever reason, as you said, they were creative, somewhat irascible chaps, they were also brilliant in other ways. And they seem to have preserved this material, even if the editor has edited it out. He's got this material. At some point, they put it together into the Atharvaveda. Now, the Atharvans are interesting, as I said. They are the Bhrigus, and here I'm using the genetic term of the Bhrigus. It's not one rishi. By now, many generations, hundreds of years. It's a family of rishis. One branch has become Parashuram and gone down that way. Another branch are doing other things. So the Atharvans have, but however, are a very strange bunch. They are very creative, rebellious, somewhat irascible people. But they keep doing some interesting things because which the Orthodox do not quite always like. So, for example, they are also the same people. One branch, as I said, goes off to the Middle East and seeds perhaps the Zoroastrian lineage. But the branch that remains in India, ultimately, after many twists and turns, ends up first in the Shakta school, which is the Shakti worshipping school, and then further into the Tantric tradition.
Absolutely.
Which is there in this book, described. And you can see that they're continuously evolving, innovating. They are simultaneously very attached to the Rig Veda and the Vedic tradition, but at the same time quite willing to do many new things. They are, for example, quite happy to incorporate new Brahmins into the community. For example, the Vatsas, there is no Vatsa Rishi, or there is no major Rishi who is called Vatsa. So who are the Vatsas? Vatsas are attached to the Bhrigus. But why are they attached to the Bhrigus? Vatsas are essentially disciples. They are the students of Bhrigu. So they are incorporating talent along the way. They are going to the somewhat extremities of the so you'll find lots of Vatsas in the south, Kerala, but you'll see lots of Vatsas in Bengal. You'll see them in Manipur, in Assam. So these are the innovators, they are the explorers, they are doing all these somewhat, these kinds of things. So the Atharva Veda is kind of, in a sense, one branch of the Bhrigus and their disciples and school of thought. They end up here in the Atharva Veda. And they are also, by the way, very experimental on drinking. They are, so that's why I said, if you are into the Atharva Veda, you should be quite happy to have them around. I'm shocked that you did not try out the mushrooms. Especially since you knew where they were. The recipes of this, what is to be done with the SOMA plant are actually quite clearly written. So I would have thought General Bakshi would have taken some of the mushrooms, crushed them, put milk on them, taken them through wool, taken what comes out, and had a few sips. Then you would have got hold of some ephedra, and then exactly the same thing. So all I have to say is that you and I now need to have a talk about this matter, and we need to find out, go back to that golf course, find the mushrooms, and do this.
So one submission also.
Yes.
One submission that, in such a Vedic discussion today, if we don't recall Adi Shankara's contribution for creating Vedic monasteries in the four corners of.
So that's a different context.
Yeah.
So what happens is all of this I'm talking about is Bronze Age up to maybe the early historical thing. Now, this by this point this entire discussion is irrelevant. The civilization has been fully settled. The Upanishads, etc., have been written, and so on and so forth. Some of the Upanishads may have something to do with the Bhrigus. The Bhrigus are generally not very Upanishadic in their views. They probably wouldn't even approve of the Upanishadic thought, by the way. So they have carried on. And a new challenge to the system comes, which is Buddhism in particular. And it leads to a universe which becomes very at least the time becomes self-negating. So there are various responses to this because there is, what should I say, at least from the Sanatan perspective, there is an idea that this is a very nihilistic idea that, in the end, the world doesn't matter. Right? So there are various responses to the idea that, if you take a very grand, everything is Brahma, everything is grand, and, then the Buddhist view of Nirvana is that you just
Shunyat.
nothing. So there are branches of Hinduism which accept that and kind of imbibe that. But there are others who kind of push back against this. So there are various pushbacks. One of the pushbacks, by the way, is the Bhagavad Gita's line, which may not have been a pushback, which exists, but it was certainly not that. Where it says, no, it does not matter if the universe is, we can all merge back. It doesn't mean, if it's a Maya, it doesn't mean that we can now sit back and just, say nothing matters. You still have karma. You still need to do what you were born to do. So there's one way of dealing with it, that you do things not because they have any fruits that you will get. You do it because that is what the dharma is. So that is one line of thought. Then there is the Shaivite line of thought where it said, and this also links to the Shakta. Shakta and Shaiva are similar in this, that you can both be a householder and have this detached feel. You can dance with full joy, and you can still be Shiva and be an ascetic. So there's this idea, and this becomes more sort of refined by the Shaktas, who basically take the view that the way you deal with the universe and its imperfections is to simply embrace it, not by separating yourself. So, for example, therefore, the idea of Kali or Durga, all these goddesses, the fierce goddesses, they are simultaneously a loving mother and Kali, the destroyer. And it's very interesting here. Meanwhile, Vaishnavism is becoming more and more imbibing increasingly ideas from Buddhism, and more importantly, Jainism is becoming more and more sattvic. Whereas the Shaktas take the other view. They're extremely suspicious of vegetables, for example, to this day. They think, for example, that why should we be sattvic? Why should sattvic be a good thing? In fact, the combination of the three, you have to have some sattvic, some rajasic, and some tamasic. That is the way. That's called Tripura Sundari. Okay, therefore you worship all three. The symbol of this line of thought, which by the way, the Bhrigu lineage, this is where the Bhrigu lineage remains alive, is the triangle, which is there in our parliament. Triangle. So this is their worldview. So there are all these. So in this milieu, you have Shankara appears, and what he's trying to do is one, provide a response to the Buddhists on one hand, but he's also trying, by this point, Hinduism is going off in all these different disparate things, maybe separating out. There must be tension among the different streams of Sanatana Dharma. And if that breaking point, and new innovations are continuously being made by people like Tantricism was clearly way too far away from the Rigvedic thinking. So he then tries to basically weld it all together in some fashion. So he goes across the country, he debates various people, he tries to find different ways in which to unite these ideas, to push back against the Buddhist ideas, but also incorporates many of them. He finds unity through the Vedantic, he finds this unity using a Vedantic thing. By the way, the people he has greatest difficulty with are the Shankars. And so, in fact, there is the story how he has to actually convert himself into the body of a dead king to actually experience life in order to debate. So,
Mandan Mishra's wife.
because they are extremely suspicious of it. Because, no, I mean, what is this self-negating view of the world that you have? So this is kind of the context. This is the 8th century, or whatever, 6th to 8th century when Shankara comes, and he tries to kind of, you can say, create a. You can say he turns up and kind of creates a new platform, cleans it up, creates all the interlinkages, and this happens repeatedly in Sanatan history. Just like Ved Vyasa also doing the same, took the Vedic corpus, cleaned it up. So in a sense, whatever Shankara got, he does one round of cleanup. Then you have 19th century Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo do the same thing. They do one round of cleanup and so on and so forth. Okay, her and then I combine it. Okay, then you. Okay, that doesn't matter. You can ask.
Sir, warrior and an excellent warrior at that.
Oh, sorry.
We all know that you are the General Bakshi. And then you jump into these swords of spirituality in your heart. And while when you say that, you came across these plants and these mushrooms when you were posted and deployed in some of the toughest terrains, what was going on in your mindset at that point of time when you were protecting the boundaries of the nation? And here you are, a more spiritual self, so centered, observe all these things around, and come out not with just this book, but the book before it, and so many books of spirituality. What is this combination, sir? This is quite.
I think that's a good question. The Indian tradition, the archetypal soldier is not I get back to the rum, not the rum drinking variety. The archetypal soldier is supposed to be the Santa Sipahi, the Brahma Kshatra tradition that he was referring to amongst the Bhrigus, amongst Parshuram. They are the first warriors and they are sages. In the Sikh tradition, you see it really exemplified. My forefather, there is Banda Bairagi, there is Bhai Matidas, Satidas, they are part of my tradition there. He was sawed in half, alive, but he won't change his faith, he wouldn't change his religion. So there is this Brahma Kshatra tradition in India, whereas the sage who stays in the forest and who realizes, I'm not the body, is the guy who will be prepared to take the risk, on the battlefield. And you've been in the uniform. So in the army, what works is, mere piche move. And for that, mere piche move. You have to be quite convinced that I would be dead. But I am convinced that this is not the end. This is not the abhayam. That if I'm free from fear, I'm sort of, transcended all that. Even the samurai tradition, by the way, is the tradition of the poet warrior. He is as good a poet as he is at the martial arts. He's as good at poetry as he is at kendo, the art of swordsmanship, or karate, or jiu-jitsu. You see? And in all the Buddhist traditions also, you see, the martial arts, starting with Karyari Pattu, which went there, have been incorporated as a part of the spiritual discipline. So it's not really a surprise. It's not really, in the Indian tradition, they are both the same. Brahma Kshatra tradition is from the very beginning, the person who is meditating and the person who is fighting are the same guy.
So when you say this, another thing comes to my mind is Ashoka.
Yeah. Yeah.
He embraced Buddhism. he kept everything, and he was the best warrior.
Yeah.
Apart from Samrat.
Right.
So you think the one who has seen that will only understand the value of peace?
I,
War all the time, like right now, Israel Hamas is happening, and we just want to bombard other nations. But as a soldier, sir, what would you say to all these people who are ready for a war?
there is something called the phenomena of the biological rebound. One organism or system pushed to one extreme suddenly rebounds to the exact opposite. I mean, just to give you an example, you are trying to break the world record in the Olympics in pole vault. So that guy, he's all tension, he's all effort. He goes over and he gets over that by a bare millimeter. And suddenly he goes into quiet euphoria, the exact opposite of this thing. So you will find these rebounds happening quite a lot on the battlefield. That man who was, the most fierce warrior. And another thing, by the way, happens. In the Ramayana, Sita tells Ram, what is wrong with you? You are picking fights. What is this hardness of heart? You're killing so much. On the battlefield, a strange phenomena happens, a hardness of heart. I've seen so many dead bodies. When I was a counter-terrorist operations I was commanding, my job was to identify, is he the same guy who's got the price of, 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs on his head. So with that bloody hand, with that torchlight, we should say, I know, give me the photograph. So I've been messing around with dead bodies for I don't know how long. And I've held the hands of people who were dying. You suddenly find a strange hardness of heart. It doesn't matter. And when I was a kid, I still remember, I used to save ants from drowning. I take a little tree and do that. So I don't know the continuity between the two people. But it happens on the battlefield that when you have to do it, you'll get that hardness of heart. And it just won't matter how many people are dying around you and how many. I've seen people with their intestines coming out, pushing them back. You see, those are horrific scenes. But that is why Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. The field of the battle is the field where you will realize what is Dharma. Like he was saying, if we all believe in na hanyate hanyamane sharire, it does not die with the death of the body. Nainam chandanti shastrani. The swords cannot cut this Atman, this thing. Would we have lost so many wars? I ask you a very simple question. Did you really believe? So in the battlefield is where your faith is put to the test. Do you believe? The Gita says this. Do you believe? Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. If you believe, you lead the charge. If you don't, you will be missing in action. Thank you. Her first and then yes. That will be only fair. Yeah.
So it's not really related to the Vedas, but about the India-Canada dispute.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we all know that Mr. Trudeau, he made massive allegations about India's involvement in Niger's assassination, and a large part of the trade between India and Canada has happened in the last decade. So do you think this deteriorating relationship between India and Canada is going to impact our trade relationship with Canada? And if yes, then which country can replace Canada?
So really a topic for another day. Yeah. Inappropriate. It is in the end his book launch. We can have that conversation someday. Yes.
Yeah, the lady there.
And I work with young minds who are very enthusiastic to learn every new thing. Now, our Vedas are full of knowledge, and you people are so knowledgeable. I just want to know how can we just incorporate all this knowledge to my young students? What can we do? Because our curriculum, we don't have anything like this. Even our new education policy, NEP, is not having what I am studying that. We are going to do with the workshops and all. What can we do so that our students are enthusiastic to learn from these all new things? Can't say new, very old things which we are having in our store, which we should know, but our youth, as students,
Got you. All that I would say is, in very brief, I'll just answer that the new education policy also lays emphasis on traditional knowledge systems.
Absolutely.
The Vice Chancellor has interpreted to mean that we can discuss Atharva Veda at the TERI, School of Advanced Studies. That is how we
So
interpret
let me
it.
actually say that,
Yeah.
since I have been one of the people given the job of writing the textbook, so let me have the See, textbooks in the end are textbooks. Every civilization in the end must have a certain enthusiasm for this material. After independence, we could have done this. We didn't do it. So why didn't we do it? For whatever reason, we didn't have that enthusiasm somewhere inside us. And you can blame Nehru or whoever you want to. I think that for the first time today, the enormous thirst to understand ourselves is just suddenly burst out. The books I write, for example, I'm not a historian. I actually, when I began writing the book, never expected to get the kinds of audiences and sales that I got. And for example, I have a very close friend of mine, Amish. He never expected those. And so there is this bursting of pride and almost like a burst of light. And in fact, there is a metaphor that is there very much in all the Vedas, that there is this herd of light that comes out and strikes your mind.
The herds of dawn, Usha.
Yeah. And
Gomati, Ashwamati.
Yeah.
Ashwamati. Strikes you.
It strikes you. And it seems that this phenomena is happening to us not as individuals, but as a people. So it is very interesting if you even read material from a few hundred years ago, even from very famous scholars, it doesn't come across as, it comes across almost dulled and tired compared to reading the original Vedas. And suddenly so after many hundreds of years, we are going through today, we are lucky to have lived at that time, and there is this genuine pride or curiosity or search for understanding our ancient wisdom. It really had gone into decline, and we sometimes say that those who conquered us try to discourage us to delve into it. Partly true. One important part of it is that we ourselves, for whatever reason, lost interest in it. And that is why we were conquered.
That
is why I believe. How could, few horsemen from Afghanistan come and take over this huge country? Because for whatever reason, we went through our woke movement somewhere 1200 AD and sort of just lost our mojo. Western civilization is going through it right now, right in front of your eyes. I mean, the same people who 2 generations ago ruled the world can't run Heathrow Airport. And so it is quite stunning that this kind of turn of civilizational mojo happens. And we are lucky that we are seeing kind of the reverse of it.
So, seriously.
I think we.
When Mr. Sanyal began his speech, you referred that when you wanted to know Atharva Veda, you picked up the book from Ralph Grishin.
Yeah.
Not an Indian.
No. So that is the material given to me.
Now the book is by an Indian and by a Sanatani being Lord of that is if I may just add that when I was trying to explore Atharva Veda, the first introduction is that it is for the first time in Atharva Veda, the word Matra Bhumi is.
Absolutely right you are.
Times of sustainability, sustainable development goals, that is the first place where Atharva Veda is the first place where earth is respected. Whether it is metallurgy, whether it is Havan by clearing the environment, or whether it is the lifestyle. So that is the beauty of Atharva Veda, and I'm absolutely excited, and that's why I'm sitting here.
There is a whole chapter. Otherwise, you see, my publisher always complains, sir, sab to aapne bana diya. So, but there is a whole chapter on this. The need for nationalism and patriotism, almost as a spiritual discipline, it is there in the Atharva Veda, Rashtra. He says, unless you worship the Rashtra, you don't get the ethical framework to live a proper life. The country comes first, always and every time. Our Chetu's motto is what you find in the Atharva Veda. I mean, there is a whole chapter on this, you see, on the Rashtra. So do buy the book for him. My publisher. All right. We are also writing.
May we request Shrishti Bhatnagar, Secretary to Honorable Meenakshi Lekhi ji, Minister of State for Culture and External Affairs, to kindly share her message. Good evening to all.
I'm sure you all must be expecting Honorable Minister to come here, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, she couldn't make it. Sincere apologies to Major General Bakshi ji. I'll read out a small message on her behalf. It goes like, there is an art of reading as well as an art of thinking and an art of writing. I'm delighted to learn that Major General Gagandeep Bakshi ji has brought out a book titled SOMA and would like to congratulate for the same. The book enunciates about one of the last unresolved riddles of Indology. It is a search for the mythical Vedic SOMA. This book will unfold many things which could be mystery to many. Like one of them could be the entire 9th mandal of the Rig Veda that is devoted to the magical SOMA. General Bakshi examines in detail the botanical aspect of SOMA as a plant and studies the biological aspect of SOMA as an endogenous elixir which he personally experienced in meditation. The highlight of this book is the quantum mechanical approach to understanding the Atma, an act of seeing that generates this cosmos. I would like to convey my best wishes to Major General Bakshi for the successful launch of this book and hope that the book enlightens a wide audience, unquote. On behalf of Honorable Minister, best wishes to Major General Bakshi ji. Thank you.
Yes, one picture.
Oh, sorry.
Give me that letter. Oh, yes, sir.
Give it from the right seat. Take it.
May I now request our publisher, Shri Ankur Pathak of Garuda Prakashan, to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. So it was a very delightful experience to listen the dignitaries on the stage, especially watching General Bakshi's presentation and listening his speech. A lot of new things we got to learn from his speech. Although before publishing General Bakshi's book, my understanding of Vedas was more related to the religious text only. But there is lot of scientific knowledge in the Vedas that we got to know through his books. Especially in this in today's event, we heard the different perspective of Sri Sanjeev Sanyal ji as well on Atharva Veda, and a different perspective of Professor Pratik Sharma, who was I could sense his elevated spiritual aspect also through his speech when he especially focused and mentioned more about the Abhedan and and some other things like non-duality aspect of living our lives. So this is really a wonderful thing that we are having this book release function at an academic institution on such a subject like Vedas, which I believe that no one can expect in, I think 10 years ago, no one can expect such book releases functions and at such institutions. Kudos to the Vice Chancellor, sir, as well. So I firmly believe that this book will definitely bring attention of youth, especially students from science background as well as from engineering backgrounds, researchers, and it will definitely opens the gate of further research in academia. Just like General Bakshi mentioned that people from CIA, those spies were, working on our, these ancient texts in around, I think 1945 or 50 something or 60s. They were doing the experiments of outer body experiences, right? While we were ignoring, because of our ignorance, we were ignoring our text, which is having a lot of knowledge. So thanks to the present new education policy as well, which is including this the traditional knowledge system in the curriculum and in the in university system as well. So now the time is to end up the session. Before ending up the session, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Honorable Minister's message. She took her time to share her message with us, and Honorable our chief guest, guest of honor, Shri Sanjeev Sanyal ji, who gave his precious time and wonderful. Means it was a treat to listen him on this. Means he is a master of various subjects. Although he's an economist, but the grip on history is remarkable. And it was really wonderful listening Professor Prateek Sharma ji as well. And now I would like to thank General Bakshi, who has written more than 45 books, which is really remarkable thing for anyone, despite having his military background. And I want to thank all of you for listening patiently to all of us and staying here till the end. And I would like to thank the whole team, the whole organizing team as well. Because of them, we are here and having this event done. So thank you very much. You can have the book from the Garuda stall outside, and you can get it signed from the author himself. Thank you.